just was a mystery to me why this 26-year-old veteran was so riled up, was so nervous about coming up to this sweet-looking kid who's 20 years old, sitting there with his woman, this father of a 2-year-old, and all of a sudden, immediately, they're, asking him to get out of the car, and they're turning him around, and they're attempting to cuff him, and it's like, what escalated, right? It's like, what happened between they see the expired tags to the fact that this guy gets shot, right? So I want to read to you what they probably read, what Kim Potter, the officer, and the other officers probably read as they were about to stop Daunte Wright. And I'm shocked, I mean, Fox News is talking about it, but I'm shocked that we're not actually having this conversation. And I'm shocked that the police wouldn't have come out with this before everybody was protesting to say, hey, cut the police a little bit of slack at least, right? Because they were operating on something that made them very nervous. So I'm going to read to you what was on the statement of probable cause, which was on the warrant that was out for Daunte Wright, okay? On June 30, 2020, okay, not that long ago, at approximately 16:04 hours, officers, blah, 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 Minneapolis police responded to a person with a gun call near 51st and Bryant Avenue North. Do you know where that is, Casey?
Yeah.
Okay. In Hennepin County, Minnesota. The caller indicated that a light, complexed, just reading word for word here, 17-year-old black male wearing black shirt and shorts and white shoes was waving a black handgun. Okay. The male then got into a white Toyota Camry, which I believe was the same car that he was stopped in and killed in, occupied by 4 people but maybe it was a different one, but occupied by 4 people with the driver wearing a red shirt. The officers located the car nearby with a person, defendant herein, Daunte Demetrius Wright, date of birth 10/27/2020, date of birth. Actually, that's incorrect. Obviously, he was not born on 2020. So there's a little error there. Maybe all of it's an error. Matching the person with the gun's description sitting in the back seat. Once out of the vehicle, defendant Daunte Wright, this is the critical part. This is why they felt they had to cuff him immediately. Once out of the vehicle, defendant Daunte Wright took off running with officers in pursuit and managed to evade officers. Did you catch that? He did the same thing when he was being stopped because of a complaint about a guy who matched his description who was waving a gun. So the police have 2 things in their mind as they're pulling up to Daunte Wright's car. One is that he had 3 things. One is he has a warrant, not a misdemeanor warrant necessarily. He also had a warrant for the armed robbery. And 2 is he has a gun or had a gun, uses guns. And 3, he already attempted to evade and did evade police on a prior occasion a little over a year ago. No, not even a year ago, less than a year ago. It was in June. Officers at the scene positively identified defendant from prior interactions. A loaded Ruger .45 caliber handgun matching the caller's description was found on the floor of the vehicle where defendant had been sitting. Another occupant of the vehicle verified that it was defendant's gun, defendant here being Daunte Wright. Defendant does not have a permit to carry a firearm. I mean, holy crap. So, Casey, what do you think? How much of a difference does that make for you?
It does, man. And again, I hate painting broad strokes with all cops are bad and she must be stupid if she got her gun mixed up with the taser, or all Black Lives Matter protests are violent. if I knew pulling him over, that he has possession of potentially of a gun, not legally, if he has ran in the past, if any of that story about him potentially robbing someone at gunpoint, yeah, I would proceed with caution 100%.
Right. Right. And for a lot of reasons. One
And I
is,
should say, by the way, too, black or white, and I'm just being real. I mean, if I read that sheet before I'm approaching the car, I'm on heightened alert. No doubt, it doesn't matter what the person looks like, race, gender, anything.
right. And as my brother explained, having handled over 100 jury trials, criminal jury trials, that stuff happens with white people and Hispanics as well. I mean, the truth is, the cop is thinking this person, now maybe the cop is a racist, maybe, but even if they aren't, they're thinking this person has already kind of shown that he's a little bit of a tricky character here, right? He has a gun. He doesn't have a permit for a gun. He's already been stopped before. He was supposedly waving a gun on a previous occasion. There was a complaint about him. He was apprehended and he took off. He took off. So he has a gun and he's prone to take off, or at least he had done it on one previous occasion. I'm going to escalate my degree of needing to control this guy, right? So cops are baseline on edge. She's already now a little bit more on edge. He does exactly what they were afraid of him doing, which is trying to flee, right? And the adrenaline kicks to a whole nother level, and then she makes a horrible mistake. So there are a couple of consequences to this. One is that I think, remember we talked yesterday about the voluntary manslaughter, right? I think that it now, with this evidence, which is likely to now come out, it is going to be impossible to find 12 jurors who are going to disregard all of that provocation and then attribute to her any sort of intentionality to kill him. I think they're going to understand exactly what I just said. What do you think? Hold on. Is that a comment? Yeah, from Kevin. Okay. Kevin, you're like our philosopher king here on the show. I love that. And I was thinking, Kevin, I was thinking about your comment about mistaking parsley and cilantro, which is truly one of the best comments I've ever seen. So Kevin says there's a difference between a citizen handling it and a cop. And are you saying it wasn't a mistake that she shot? I'm not excusing the person, but it doesn't raise it. So I'm not quite sure what you're saying. What I'm saying, and I think I've been very clear, she obviously did a horrible thing. The question before the jury when she goes up on trial, if she does, is going to be, did she have intentionality, or did she make a horrible mistake? So she immediately apologizes for it after. And now we know a little bit of the backstory, right? That this kid was seen as a flight risk and potentially carrying a gun. And so if you literally have police records showing that you've been waving around a Ruger 45, there's no way in the world that Kim Potter or any of the police officers could be confident that he did not have a gun then. So he bolts back into the car. They're now fresh from reading this police report. They're now thinking, oh my goodness, he's going to get a gun. We've got to subdue him, right? So in that self-defense mindset and panic, she does an incredibly stupid thing, right? I do not believe, I'm going to go on record, I do not believe that with 26 years of having the opportunity to have a gun, patrolling Minneapolis or Brooklyn Center, and all those opportunities to kill black men, that if she really was that much of a racist, that she would kill Dante Wright in cold blood, that, you know, she wouldn't have done it before, right? I mean, doesn't that make sense?
Richard, does she have any background either? You know, I'll see that she's won some awards the last 26 years, and she was part of some of the training program and things like that too. But does she have any blemishes on her record? I'm not sure.
I don't know, but here's my big issue. And also with George Floyd, I've gotten into some discussions with people on Facebook. No, he didn't resist arrest. No, he didn't resist arrest. It took the longest period of time for us to get the full picture of what happened with George Floyd. In other words, why did he end up on the ground, right? There's always a story, right? He ended up on the ground because, now you may not call it resisting arrest, but I think it's kind of black or white. You either do what the police ask you to do, and they said, get in the car, and he said no. Now, he had reasons for it. He said, I'm claustrophobic, you know, I had COVID, I'm this, whatever. But the truth is he resisted getting in the car, right? And because of that, the situation escalated. But we didn't know that for the longest time. So the question is, why why are we not learning the police's side, the full picture on all of these things, including Dante Wright? What do you think?
You know what I find disturbing too, Richard, and this will bring me back to your question, you know, just watching some of the local news and even some of the national news, you know, I feel sometimes we're just chasing ratings at all costs. You know, even my example I gave you about Jackie Robinson today, you know, that they talked a little bit about the Minneapolis stuff today on ESPN, and ever since it happened, right? But, you know, I think, was it the other day in Hutchinson that a cop was dragged with a car and then beat over the head with a hammer? I think over the weekend there was a cop shot in the face at a routine stop from somebody in Arizona or something. And I don't see any of this stuff on the news. You know, again, I feel like it's like Facebook. It's like you're feeding to what your audience is, and you're only seeing one version of something, whether you like it or not. You know, I feel like the news does that at times too, a lot, man. And that's why, you know, and I'll get flack for it. I'll turn on Fox News just for shits and giggles to see what they're reporting. But there's sometimes they're saying things, it's like, I had no idea, you know, and then I follow it with a click to something else. But it's I feel like we're chasing one thing where we're like a bunch of cats, and they throw yarn down the hallway and we chase after it and we hammer it over and over again until it's stale and they move on to something else. But I'm with you, dude. I think people's lives are at stake. They should get a full picture. You know, when I bring up the example, and just one more second on this, in Brooklyn Center, and I said this yesterday, you know, they have peaceful protests and there's merit to that. And then once it gets dark outside, you have agitators that come in. And I think there's a night and day difference. And you have these poor people that are living in these apartments, and they'll describe it even today, a couple of them, it's a war zone at night. You know, they smell the tear gas, you know, that there's bright lights. They hear people swearing and screaming. They're looking out their front window and they're seeing people getting thrown to the ground and handcuffed. I think someone even had a severed pig's head on a stake last night. I mean, it's a war zone, you know, and it's just I don't feel like we're getting the full facts, is what I'm saying.
Well, you could have bet $1 million that Fox News was going to be talking all day long about Dante Wright's police record and his armed robbery and all of these things. And I think it diminishes, quite honestly. I mean, I mainly watch MSNBC and CNN, but I think it diminishes CNN and MSNBC's credibility in any other, you know, more progressive media if they don't acknowledge the full story, right? I mean, we're counting on them to do this, and this, I believe, is highly relevant. But Fox News, boy, they were all over this. And the truth is, as much as I despise Fox News, and it literally sometimes turns my stomach, you know, a stop clock is right twice a day. And every once in a while, they've got a better beat on a story than MSNBC and CNN. And I think on this one, they do. Did you see the fight Did you see the fight between Dan Bongino and what's his name on Fox?
No, no.
What's his name? The Hispanic American lawyer, Geraldo Rivera.
Geraldo, yep.
I mean, they got into almost a fist fight on Fox News, and Bongino was saying, "You're trying to destroy America. You want riots in the streets," and Geraldo came back and woo. I mean, it was really fun. Anyway, I have to tell you, speaking of fullness of explanation, remember I attacked virologist, epidemiologist Peter Hotez, who's on CNN, or actually I think he's mainly on MSNBC. And I said, he's not returning my emails. He won't talk about these therapeutics. He won't talk about vitamin D. And he wrote me back while we were talking about the same exact time we were talking about him on our show. Obviously, he watches our show. Hi, Peter. And he said, you know, I've been all over those issues about the therapeutics. He's a tropical medicine expert, and he's used ivermectin for a long time. And it's like, well, Peter, come on, dude, you know, why don't you talk about it? And he said it's because essentially, you know, if asked, I would tell people. I said, no, you can't rely on the media. The media is not, especially the media that is funded, right? Who are they funded by, right? They're funded by, you know, the pharmaceutical company. Almost every ad on MSNBC and CNN and everything is from big pharma. So you can't rely on that. So I'm very excited about that. Then an anti-vax friend of mine sent me an article and says, you know, 18 reasons why I'm not taking a COVID vaccine. And so I sent it, now that Peter Hotez and I are best buddies, I sent it to Peter, and he goes, wow, it's amazing how sophisticated these anti-vaxxers are getting. You know, their disinformation is even more, you know, effective, or they're trying to make it even more effective. So Casey, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to try to get our new best friend, Peter Hotez, epidemiologist and virology apologist, and I'm going to try to get him on. And we're not going to do a debate with Bobby Kennedy. I mean, I've been trying to figure out something like that, but we're going to go through those 18 things. And it's like, so here's this reason number 5. Peter, why is this disinformation? Why is this incomplete? Why is this false? Don't you think that'd be a good service? I think a video like that could go viral, because we just haven't had thorough, comprehensive conversation about these things. We have two sides, like you said, everybody's in their own bubble.
You know, it's weird. We were talking about Fox News, right? You know, watching them in regards to the vaccine and how they're all over this Johnson and Johnson thing with the 6 or 7 people out of 1 million. You know, they're acting like that's a pandemic in itself, but they're just feeding these anti-vaxxers that story. It's like Christmas morning. But yeah, I would love to hear something like that. I think that's a great idea.
So here's my view on the vax and the Johnson and Johnson. There are some reports that only 1% of the people who are having adverse reactions are even reporting it, right? So if you have 6, and that's 1%, that's 600, right? Out of 7 million, that's still not very much. But if you look at the VAERS reporting page, there's a lot of people having problems with vaccines. And again, we need transparency, 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 so that people can make an informed choice, right? This is a big decision for people. So how do you feel about, which vaccine did you get?
I got the J&J.
And no reactions, no blood clots?
No, except for, I mean, you know, I was expecting something the next day to feel a little off, which I did, but 2 days later, I felt like $1 million. So no, I'm good.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
Which, by the way, you know, I should say, I would rather feel off for 1 day versus getting COVID and spreading it and feeling off for God only knows how long. So that alone right there outweighs all the negatives for me.
Got it. Okay, so when we come back, I want to talk about what I think is the stupidest thing that the Democrats may have ever done politically, and that is to introduce a bill. And my friend Ed Markey, Senator Ed Markey, is one of the sponsors on the Senate side, and there's some House sponsors, of course, to increase the Supreme Court to 13 members instead of 9. In other words, to add 4, of course, progressive members to the Supreme Court. I immediately posted something saying this was one of the biggest political mistakes I've ever seen. I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to tell you Nancy Pelosi's reaction when we come back. We're going to take a little break and on Political Voices Network, and we'll be back in 2 minutes.
We need to get you like one of those big plastic bubbles to walk around in. One of those big, like inflatable suits. Like even one of those like sumo wrestler suits that they have at Renaissance fairs and things like that.
Yeah.
One of those.
That's to protect her and us.
To protect you, yeah.
Speaking
to prevent
of
you from hurting yourself.
Speaking of
And,
outfits,
and never
Bob
and never
Seska.
Stephanie, take the
Bob Seska posted a picture of him with a tiny Batmobile on Instagram, and he had a little 8-year-old boy smile on his face. He was so excited. It just said, "If only it was bigger. If only it was bigger." I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm gonna hit myself in the head with a giant cartoon mallet." That is too cute. You are officially too cute.
Oh my God, yes indeed, yes indeed. Well,
You're such a nerd.
I am so desperate to get vaccinated so I have more Instagram material. That's
Yes.
the whole
Are you-
motivation right
Are
now.
you getting what? I don't know where. Are you in? Wait, Virginia?
Virginia.
Or
Virginia.
no, DC?
Well, no, Maryland.
Oh, Maryland.
Like the DC, Maryland Metroplex. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Are
The
you?
DMV.
Are you getting
Yeah.
your? Get my little
What?
Get my little Batman the shot. Get him the shot. Are you in line? What's happening?
Yeah, well, I'm desperately looking for one. Both Kimberly and I are pre-registered for the mass vaccination sites, which
Okay.
now, as of yesterday, are now open to everybody, or 16 plus. 16
Probably-
plus in Maryland could go to the mass vaccination sites. So
Probably
we're
not.
registered. We're just waiting. I'm standing by.
Probably
waiting
not
for the
you
text
two.
message.
You two will show up. They'll be like, "No, you are genetically engineered super soldiers of some kind, and you can go to the
That's
back of the
right.
line."
Also,
Mhm.
check the CVS and Walgreens websites. Those are not connected to like the mass vaccination, the state sites. So
Yeah.
check those too, because you're eligible for those sites as well.
And those go
Oh,
really
yeah, well,
smooth.
no, actually, I don't think so. Here in Maryland, that's not. You can't go to the pharmacies yet until Monday. Monday.
Oh,
the 12th.
really? Okay.
That's when
Yeah.
that opens
Okay.
for
I mean,
16 plus in the pharmacies. And I discovered that the other day on Monday when I went down to the pharmacy behind my apartment and went up casually. I told this story on my show yesterday. Went up casually to the pharmacist desk there, and I, was wearing a mask and everything. And the pharmacist looks at me and I said, "Hey, got any extra? Got any extra?" I'm doing Sling Blade. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
If you don't have any vaccine, I'm gonna cut your head off with a sling blade.
I don't know why.
All right.
I
Yeah,
don't know
need
why.
biscuits and mustard.
And he gave me a little bit of a lesson, some coaching, and then we played a doubles match with the winners of the club tournament at that club we were playing at. And I was playing literally with my doubles partner, Mike Bryan, and we won 6-3, obviously mainly because of him. But that was an amazing, fun thing. So thank you, Larry Greene, my brother, for that great surprise. So let's talk about this bill to increase the number of Supreme Court justices to 13. Kevin says, if Democrats could increase it, what's going to stop Republicans from increasing it as well? There's a really simple answer to that. So I am in favor of increasing the number of Supreme Court justices because of Mitch McConnell. He broke the system. We need to fix it. He put it way out of balance by refusing to confirm Merrick Garland or even to have hearings. That was an egregious, felonious abuse of basic civics and the rules of the Senate and our democracy. He deserves to be punished, right? One of the ways to punish him is to reverse the spin, right? So it is now 6-3. It would have been 5-4, right? And also, I think Donald Trump was not legitimately elected president of the United States. And therefore, the other two are illegitimate in my mind as well. So it should actually be 6-3 the other way. Having said that, the answer to your question, Kevin, is that in order to increase or decrease or do anything with the federal judiciary, including the Supreme Court, you need to have a bill, right? Simple legislation. It's not anything special. A bill that is passed by the House of Representatives, that is passed by the Senate, and is signed by the president. So you need what is referred to as a trifecta, right? Both houses of Congress and the executive branch. So even if Republicans, if we increased it to 13 and Republicans came in, they would have to have a majority that was in support of this bill in the House, a majority that was in support of this bill in the Senate, and that could be a 3-for-3. We right now have 3-for-3, but because of the filibuster, we can't get the Senate to do this. So it's a complete waste of time to take a baseball bat to a hornet's nest, one of my favorite, analogies. And sure enough, right after I posted this thing on Hamilton Electra saying this is one of the biggest political mistakes I've ever seen, I start watching Fox News, and guess what is leading Fox News every hour that I watched? Every hour, it was Democrats court packing power grab, right? And they're scaring the crap out of people, especially who? This is what we need to understand. The reason Republicans care about the Supreme Court is because of Roe v. Wade. And they've been waiting and waiting and waiting. And now it looks like the Democrats, even though they have a 6-3 court, are going to take away something they've been fighting for from 1973, when Justice Blackmun wrote the Roe v. Wade decision. That's a long time. They've been waiting for this thing because they truly believe, at least that many of the Republicans truly believe, that abortion is murder, right? And listen, they're entitled to their interpretation, but because they believe it is literally murder, they want to make sure that it doesn't happen anymore, which means, because they now understand it, they've been following this, they've become Supreme Court experts, they've become fixated, focused, obsessed with the Supreme Court because of what happened in 1973. Democrats haven't. Democrats, Supreme Court, I just want somebody like Bernie, or I just want, a progressive, or I care about whatever. And they don't understand civics enough to understand that with a bad Supreme Court like we have now, even if we passed every single bill that Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren or Nancy Pelosi wants, every progressive bill, each and every one of them could be overturned and snuffed out. That's how important the Supreme Court is, right? So Republicans are on it, and especially in midterm elections, they turn out to vote for the Supreme Court because they know, they're smarter than we are. They know that by electing Republican senators, that reduces the chance that any radical, far left, woke liberals are going to be appointed to the Supreme Court. Now, because it's still a risk, even if that bill does not pass, even if we don't get 4 more Supreme Court justices, if Justice Breyer leaves, if Clarence Thomas retires, if anything happens, President Biden, I love those 2 words, President Biden, he's going to be giving a State of the Union-ish. It's not really called a State of the Union. He's giving a State of the Union kind of address, I believe, on April 28th. That was just announced. President Biden will nominate a progressive, and as progressive a justice as he can get away with, depending on how many senators there are. They're going to go out and they are going to vote in the midterm elections to prevent this thing from happening, expanding the Supreme Court, and to prevent Joe Biden from getting the justice that he wants. Okay, so because we need to hold on to every single Democratic senator and pretty much every single Democratic member of the House of Representatives, if you inflame Republicans and they are led to believe, because they're watching Fox News and they're listening to Uncle Jake on Facebook rant about the Democrats' power grab and about everything is going to be changed in our country and white people are going to be canceled, and it's all going to be everything that Black Lives Matter wants, you're going to be so motivated to make sure you're registered to vote and to get out and vote in the 2022 midterm elections. Combine that, ladies and gentlemen, combine that with the voter suppression of our base, young people, people of color, in a lot of these states, even states that have Senate and key House elections, we are looking at a disaster in the midterm elections, which would mean that we not only are not going to be able to expand the Supreme Court, we're not going to be able to get anything done. So Ed Markey, I love you, man. Progressives, I love you. I'm behind you. I want to expand the Supreme Court. It will not likely be undone, Kevin, because of how hard it is to get this trifecta of a majority in the House, the Senate, and having a president in the White House. But this was stupid. It's never going to pass. Why would you put forth a bill that's only going to inflame your enemy and make sure that they go out and vote so that you don't even have a majority to pass anything after the midterm elections? Okay, so thank you, Kevin. I hope I satisfied my 45-second promise. Okay, Bonnie Joe, given this history, why is it that so many of us think the requirement of a 9-member Supreme Court is carved in stone? Surely has something to do with the fact that the number has not changed for 150 years. You know who, and again, we're celebrating, not celebrating, and we love Abraham Lincoln. We're commemorating his murder, his assassination on this day, April 15th in 1865. Abraham Lincoln was the last person to change the number of Supreme Court justices. And if Abe can do it, we can do it. Okay, Dana, yes, what I said is correct. It's always going to be their rallying cry either way, not saying they should. Okay, so you can have your beehive, you can have your hornet's nest, but you can choose to coexist and understand and not provoke them. You can have your racist cops, and when you get pulled over, you can understand that they're racist or potentially racist, and they have guns and tasers, and you can choose to provoke them or not provoke them. I'm just saying, if we're smart, you don't provoke people who can do bad things to you. Kevin, what do you think of this? Are you there?
Are you talking Kevin or Casey?
Casey, I'm sorry. You're right. I was Kevin's on my head. I'm still obsessed with that. How do you mistake a taser and a gun, a Glock, and comparing that to mistaking parsley and cilantro?
No, it's funny because Kevin's on my mind too, because I liked his comment from Facebook. If Democrats could increase it, what's stopping from Republicans to do it next go around too? I don't know what the perfect number in the Supreme Court is. Just an interesting thing I think to tackle right now, I suppose.
The perfect number, in my opinion, is a number that represents and reflects the wishes, the will of the American people.
Yeah.
Right. So the vast majority of people are happy with Roe v. Wade. They want Roe v. Wade. They want to be able to have abortions up to a point. The vast majority of people are not Second Amendment crazies. They want reasonable gun limitations, right? and they want background checks and all of that, right? This current Supreme Court, even if we pass, background checks, they could strike it down and say it was violative of the Second Amendment. A quick civics question for you, Casey. If there is precedent saying, for example, that background checks do not violate the Second Amendment, could a new court, a year or 6 months or 6 years or 60 years later, can they overturn that and say, you know what, background checks actually do violate the Second Amendment? Could they do that, or are they bound by precedent? We're having a lot of civics today. This is good.
That's a good question. I think they are bound in some ways, right?
Well, let's find out.
I'm dying to know.
You're dying to know. Well, don't die. I need you to continue to be my producer and my co-host, my sidekick, or I'm your sidekick. And I'm going to tell our dear friend Ron Hartmann, we're having a meeting later. He's in charge of Political Voices Network. How valuable you are, and what a wonderful co-host you are.
We should get Kevin to have his own segment on here too.
Well, I agree. The parsley versus cilantro hour or minute with Kevin.
There you go.
So if you have what do you think? What's the answer to that? Let's see. If Manchin is opposed, are we still able to pass filibuster reform? What are the paths? Ron, how you doing, man? No, I still want to get thoughts, right? Can you overturn very clear precedent, for example, about whether background checks are allowed under the Second Amendment or not? Okay. And you're going to be fascinated by the answer, but we're going to wait. I want to see if there's any people who want to weigh in on that first. Okay. And in the meantime, I'm going to answer Ron's question. So if Joe Manchin is not willing to reform the filibuster in any meaningful way, and there is no Republican who's willing to cross party lines and vote to reform the filibuster, which is a 99.99999% certainty, we're not going to reform the filibuster because we have zero margin of error. We only have 50. We need all 50. We're not going to reform the filibuster. If we don't reform the filibuster, that means that every piece of legislation, except for the budget reconciliation pieces, which is why you got your $1,400 check, if you got that, why we're going to pass infrastructure, which we will, because it fits within these very limited opportunities we have to pass things without a filibuster. But unless we reform the filibuster, nothing is going to get passed that the Republicans don't like. Mitch McConnell will, in fact, have complete veto power over Joe Biden's legislative agenda, which sucks. Okay, so you think, okay, how certain are you? Okay, this is like, you want to be a millionaire or whatever, are you sure? Are you certain of your answer that a current Supreme Court cannot overturn 180 degrees prior precedent, for example, on whether it is within the Second Amendment or not to have background checks being mandated?
Oh God.
How certain are you?
I think they're somewhat bound. There's something there where they're bound where they can't, right?
Do you want to call a friend?
I wish I could.
Okay, well, I will be your friend and I will give you the answer, right? So I want everybody to understand this. This is one of the most important civics lessons that there is. The Supreme Court is the Supreme Court. What that means, I don't mean to be cute, it's just, I'm being literal. Whatever they say is the law. Whatever they say is the Constitution. And a Supreme Court on April 15, 2021 can overrule what a Supreme Court on April 14th, 2021 said, or April 14th, 1921. The Supreme Court has zero checks and balances on what they can do. Zero. Now, there is a morality, there's a norm where they are somewhat expected to follow precedent. But have you ever spoken to a lawyer, right? A lawyer can take what seems to be a simple thing and they can argue both sides of it, right? Just like we're seeing the defense lawyer in the Derek Chauvin trial, right? They're not very rational arguments about, you know, the defense, right? I mean, Derek Chauvin is guilty, in my opinion, of first-degree murder, absolutely, right? But they can make arguments. And you will often see in a controversial case, which is 5-4-6-3, that there is a dissent who's coming at it, even though there is precedent, the majority comes at it in one direction, the dissent comes at it in a completely different direction. So nothing is, shall we say, black and white. Nothing is that clear. These are talented legal minds. They have lots of law clerks. And if Justice Clarence Thomas, for example, wants to overturn a ruling that says that background checks are constitutional, he could come up with an argument. And if he gets 4 more justices, guess what? It's overturned, no matter what the prior precedent is, because, and the way we lawyers do our bullshit justification and legal talk is we'll come up with a nuance that it differentiates the precedent, saying, oh, back in 1921, the law that was being called constitutional about background checks, and there isn't, I'm just making this up as an example, you know, did not factor in blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense? It's scary though, right? Which is why you want to make sure that people, in fact, get out and vote, and that people are not demotivated to vote, you know, or suppressed in their vote, because you need to make sure that you have senators who can confirm, justices, if you believe in background checks, for example, justices who will not allow the Second Amendment to ever be interpreted while they are on the Supreme Court to not allow background checks or red flag laws or any of the other things. Anyway, we're at the end of our day. A lot to talk about. You know, the news is people say, well, do you watch this series on Netflix, or do you watch this, or you watch all these movies? Man, there is so much incredibly exciting drama that happens every day in the news, even without Donald Trump. That's why it's so fun and so cathartic, at least for me, hopefully for you as well, to be able to go through these issues every day for an hour. Casey, last comments?
No, man, I love learning from you. I mean, that probably makes a lot of sense of why they drill these people when they want, like, when they want to be on the Supreme Court, right? I mean, it makes complete sense.
Because a president who's pretty important, we all know how important a president is, that's 4 years, maybe 8. A Supreme Court justice like Justice Breyer has been on for 27 years. You can be on there for 40 years. Trump purposely picked young nominees because he wants his legacy, his Trump court, to be there forever as a monument to him, another Trump Tower, right? This time it's in the Supreme Court. No, Supreme Court justices have unbelievable power. Unbelievable power. They literally handed George W. Bush the election in Bush v. Gore. Literally, they chose the president because of Sandra Day O'Connor being the swing vote in a 5-4 decision, which was the worst decision in the history of the Supreme Court. But they're the Supreme Court. They can do whatever they want. Anyway, this is Richard Greene with my co-host, Casey Evans. I'll see you in a few minutes. I'll see you in a few minutes on Zoom, buddy. Take care. We'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.